I used to be that way myself not too long ago. If something didn't help me get more weight onto my back squat, I didn't see the point in doing it, even if that... What's up, guys? Enkiri here, and today I want to talk a little bit about carryover in your training. See, we live in a very squat, bench press, and deadlift biased fitness world, a very SBD-centric fitness world, and those exercises have great value, to be sure. They build strength across the body, they build muscle across the body, and they do so very potently and very effectively. That's why I'm a big fan of them myself. That said, those three traditional, classic, kind of single standardized variations of the exercises, of those movement patterns, tend to be very overemphasized across a lot of strength and conditioning programs, when in fact there are a million different permutations of those same movements that accomplish the same things as well as different and additional things. And there are a million other exercises that accomplish different fitness goals altogether as well that often go neglected. So with that in mind, at this point it kind of frustrates me a little bit when I incessantly receive inquiries. I'll showcase an exercise and I will incessantly receive inquiries along the lines of, well, does X exercise carry over into my low bar back squat? Or does Y exercise build the bench press or the deadlift? And I'm like, maybe, but maybe not. And also, who really cares? By and large, we're still so powerlifting-centric in general that if something doesn't directly carry over into our ability to add more weight onto the powerlifting style squat, bench press, or deadlift, then many of us automatically discard those things as a waste of time and a waste of energy. And I'll tell you what, I used to be that way myself not too long ago. If something didn't help me get more weight onto my back squat, I didn't see the point in doing it, even if that very same something made me stronger or fitter as a whole. I was obsessed with the idea of carryover, right? And the more carryover that something had into that narrow realm that I had assigned the greatest value to, then the more value that I would internally assign to that particular tool. And the less carryover that something had into that narrow realm, then the less value that I would assign to that particular tool. But today, I'm here to tell you that I was wrong and that that notion is very misguided. So just for one thing, we have to actually start distinguishing between direct carryover and indirect carryover. So part of what made me fall in love with front squats so many years ago is that they basically had a proportional and direct carryover into my back squat. That is, if I added 50 pounds to my front squat, then when I went back and trained the back squat once again, I would in very short order see a proportional 50-pound increase on my back squat as well, or at least a percentage-wise proportional increase. Basically, though, I'd get a pound for pound or a 1-to-1 carryover ratio from front squats into back squats. It's a very reliable way for me to increase one and the other. They feed off of each other, right? Now, if you look at something like an RDL versus a conventional deadlift, for me, I could build hamstring strength and increase my Romanian deadlift substantially, right? But in the process, it's quite possible that my deadlift, my conventional deadlift, will not even budge 1 single inch or 1 single pound. The direct carryover from the RDL into the conventional deadlift, for me, is much, much lower. So as a consequence of that, I had formerly deemed RDLs as a low value movement, and I hardly ever did them as a result of that. But that is foolish. And just because the RDL didn't directly and immediately increase my conventional deadlift does not mean that the RDL holds no value for me. In fact, it holds great value as a strength, hypertrophy, and even mobility tool for the hamstrings. But in my narrow field of vision all those years ago, I was simply incapable of seeing that. But it's a very myopic, short-term, miss the forest for the trees type of mentality. If I build my RDL substantially over time and I build much bigger and stronger hamstrings as a result, then in the long run, I'm going to have the potential to deadlift much, much more weight if that is a goal of mine in the future. But if all I do is deadlift, deadlift, deadlift until the cows come home, then yes, I will see better gains on the deadlift in the short run, but eventually I will hit an impenetrable ceiling, a plateau that cannot be overcome because I pigeonholed myself into this tiny little path based on my inability to see the bigger picture, how something can create indirect carryover and kind of coax along long-term progress and long-term gains. But that's just one aspect here. And even that is still looking through the same powerlifting-centric vantage point that I was talking about earlier in the video, but now it's really just expanding the concept of carryover, still just obsessing about carryover, but now talking about both direct and indirect as well. It gives you a bigger picture perspective if your goal happens to still be just improving the squat, bench press, and the deadlift, right? You're not quite as myopic anymore. But if you aren't interested in powerlifting or you don't compete in powerlifting, then in my opinion, there is absolutely no reason to view your strength, conditioning, and hypertrophy work through this carryover lens at all. You can free yourself from these shackles entirely because you are not bound by any specific movements in any capacity whatsoever. And like I said at the beginning of the video, there are a million other movements and exercises that can accomplish the exact same things and more as those big three movements, the powerlifting style squat, bench press, and deadlift, right? Now, if you don't want to, so for example, if you don't want to back squat at all, a front squat can build just as much size and strength in the legs. Work for somebody like me. If you get bored of the front squat, you can try a Zercher squat. That's literally what I'm doing right now. And being that I have all these different experiences in all these different realms, I can feel the massively different impacts between even just those two types of movements, right? So the Zercher, I'm already feeling it really isn't going, it wouldn't carry over into a back squat at all, right? It's also hitting my legs a lot less. It's hitting my middle back more than a front squat does, but it's not hitting my upper back to quite the same extent. And again, that Zercher squat will not carry over into a back squat for jack fucking shit. It probably won't carry over into a front squat either. But again, who cares? I'm working my legs, I'm working my back, I'm working my hips. It will build strength and size in the body, right? It's still highly productive, even though it doesn't carry over into these movements that we're so like obsessed over for whatever reason. So then further, if you don't want to pull conventional, you can just do Romanian deadlifts and build your posterior chain that way. Not something I would have said 5 or 10 years ago, but with a bigger picture mindset, something that I'm able to see now. It may really not help you to deadlift more weight even in a period of several years, right? Conventionally, dead stop from the floor. That doesn't mean that your hamstrings and your lower back and your glutes didn't get bigger and stronger. If you want bigger, stronger pecs, you can focus on the incline bench instead of the flat bench. You can try pressing overhead for once instead of obsessing over those overly stabilized bench press variations that we are crazy for in the fitness industry, again, because of the popularity of powerlifting. That's all I can really surmise. Or another route is to actually give calisthenics movements an earnest shot, something that not enough people do, where a lot of those different exercises have a lot of their own different values. You can focus on your chin up if you want to build a big, strong back. And again, that's not something that's going to carry over into your deadlift at all. Doesn't mean it doesn't have value, right? An overhead press isn't going to carry over into a bench press for jack fucking shit either. But again, who cares? Do you want to become big and strong, or do you just want to become better at the standard squat, bench press, and deadlift? Now, that's an important question that you have to ask yourself and answer for yourself, because the fact of the matter is you can become a whole heck of a lot bigger and stronger. Actually, in my opinion, you can maximize your potential, your strength and hypertrophy potential, without coming close to maximizing your potential in terms of how much weight that you can move on the squat, bench press, and deadlift within the specifications of powerlifting competition. But here's the thing, and this may come as a surprise to many of you, but a big, strong person is a big, strong person. How you get big and strong is of little consequence, because once you do get there, once you get big and strong, you are big and strong. And you can invariably express that strength through a whole host of different movement patterns, even if you cannot optimally express it on any given 1, 2, or 3 of them specifically. But the more patterns that you expose yourself to throughout your development, the more well-rounded that you will become across this process over time. So in my opinion, to pigeonhole yourself into any specific narrow realms simply in the name of carryover is kind of short-sighted. But unfortunately, many of us fall victim to these notions, even those of us whom they don't benefit at all, simply because of the way that things just kind of are in the generalized fitness industry. But if you do allow yourself to view your fitness through this wider lens that I'm talking about here today, as opposed to through the narrow powerlifting-centric field of view that so many of us inadvertently end up falling into, then you will end up becoming an overall much more well-rounded lifter and athlete in terms of your general fitness, your general strength levels, all that good stuff. And you'll also become, again, just as big and strong in the long run as you would have gotten anyway, had you chosen to narrow your field of view to the extent of powerlifting specifically. It just may be that you end up strong in different ways than you would have otherwise. You end up being best able to express your strength in different ways than you would have otherwise, and maybe you end up with different muscle groups that end up being bigger on your body, that end up being the most emphasized muscle groups on your body in particular. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I hope that it helps you to kind of broaden your perspective on what strength and conditioning can be, as opposed to what the fitness industry often shows you that it is. And if you're interested in training like me and utilizing some of the concepts that I espouse here in this video, be sure to check out my training programs at EnkiriEliteFitness.com. I've gotten nothing but immensely positive feedback and reports of massive gains from those programs over the years. Remember to smash the like button before you go. Leave me some love in the comments down below. And as always, keep training hard. I will catch you guys next time.